Hi, this is Ajay Anand and welcome to social science classes from excelup.com. In this lesson, you will be learning about the sectors of economy. You will learn about three sectors, then about historical changes in sectors. You will also learn about the Indian scenario pertaining to three sectors of economy. You will learn about unemployment, then about other qualifications like organized sectors, unorganized sectors, public sectors and private sectors. So economy or economic activities can be divided into three sectors, and they are called the primary sector, the secondary sector and tertiary sector. When goods are produced by exploiting natural resources, then the sector is called the primary sector. Since this sector forms the base of all other products which human beings subsequently produce, hence this sector is called primary sector because it makes the base of all other sectors. And most of the products which are being produced in this sector, they are related to agriculture, and that is the reason this sector is also called the agriculture sector or related sector. Now in case of secondary sector, what happens? The natural products, they are changed into other forms through manufacturing, so they no longer remain natural. This sector is also called the industrial sector. Then there is a third sector which helps in developing the primary and secondary sector. It facilitates the smooth functioning of primary and secondary sector, and this sector is called the tertiary sector or services sector. Now, how do we arrive at the value of a particular sector? For valuation of sector, value of final goods and services for a year is calculated, and when we take the sum of production in all the three sectors, then the total is called the GDP, that is gross domestic product. To understand the valuation of final goods or services, let us take this example. Suppose there is a farmer, he sells wheat at rupees 8 per kg to a flour mill. Okay. Now the flour mill processes the wheat to produce flour and sells flour at rupees 10 per kg to a biscuit company. The biscuit company utilizes flour and other ingredients to make biscuit and comes out with 4 packets of biscuit out of this 10 kg of 1 kg of flour. And the biscuit company sells the 4 packets of biscuits for rupees 60, and these biscuits, they ultimately reach the consumer or the end user. So while calculating the valuation, we just take the value of these 4 packets of biscuits. The value of flour or wheat, they are not accounted because these are not reaching the final customer. These are being used as intermediary product while processing the biscuit. Okay. So this is the concept of finding the valuation of a particular sector. So we cannot take into account the value of raw materials. Now, what are the historical changes through different sectors? So when in human civilization, it started as a settled civilization, all the activities, all the economic activities, they happen to be in the primary sector. So this was the stage 1. Then stage 2 came when food production, it became more than what was needed, and this ensured that many people now they could focus on other works or other responsibilities. So this page, it saw the emergence of other professions like craft persons, traders. And craft persons, for example, they were required to make useful items for the farming community and for other people. And traders, they were required to trade in the surplus food that was being produced. Still, at this page, the most of the economic activities, it was related to the primary sector, and primary sector was the only sector. Then came the stage 3. At this stage, industrialization happened, and industrialization means the big factories, they came into origin, which made it possible to mass produce goods, and the mass production resulted in the development of the secondary sector. At this stage, the secondary sector, it became more important than primary sector, and in case of stage 4, the services sector became more important. Okay, so this is the pattern in all the developed economies. So they at first passed through the phase of primary sector, then the secondary sector grew in importance, and later on the services sector became most important sector. Okay. So now, what is the situation in India? Let us analyze some figures. Here are 3 graphs. These figures, they show the trends over 4 decades, 40 years. From there is a comparison of 1971-72 and 2011-12. The first graph, it shows the rupee values of various sectors. Okay. The second graph, it shows share of various sectors in GDP, and the third graph shows share in employment. Now, in case of first graph, so all the sector put together, they had the total turnover of 500,000 rupees. Okay. So after 4 decades, this figure jumped to more than 5 million rupees. So there was a jump of 10 times, right? Here you can see that the primary sector, which is shown by blue color, and the tertiary sector, they were important. Primary sector was more important than tertiary sector, and the contribution of secondary sector was a little bit lesser than these 2 sectors. Okay. So what happened by 2011-12? The primary sector, it grew from 500,000 to around 800,000 rupees. The secondary sector, it grew to around more than 1 million rupees, and the tertiary sector, it grew around 3 million rupees. Okay. So the value of tertiary sector, it grew manifold. There was a dramatic turnaround, we can say, right? And other 2 sectors, they had diminished importance. So this shows a very good figure that okay, the tertiary sector, it became more important, followed by the secondary sector, and the primary sector was less in importance in terms of the valuation. Now what happens in regarding the share in GDP? So in 1971-72, the GDP of primary sector was around 40%, that of secondary sector was 20%, and the share of tertiary sector was 40%. In 2011-12, the share of primary sector reduced from 40% to 10%. Share of secondary sector, it was 30%, so there was a growth, and share of tertiary sector, it was 60%. So this figure is in tune, these 2 figures, the valuation and share in GDP. Now let us see what is the situation in terms of employment generation. So this is the figure of 1971-72, this is the figure of 2011 and 12. So in terms of employment opportunities, in 1971-72, 70% of the people, they were dependent on the primary sector for employment. Okay, so this figure, it dropped down from 70% to 49%, to be precise. Okay, so there was a drop, but it was not as significant as these drops. Okay, for secondary sector, this figure was 10% in 71-72, and in 2011-12 it was 20%. Okay, and for tertiary sector it was 20% in 71-72, and in 11-12 it was 30%. So 30% of the people now they get employment from the tertiary sector. So in spite of the huge growth, the tertiary sector has not generated as much employment as it should have, and that is the reason most of the people are still dependent on agriculture or primary sector for employment. So this is not a good picture. This shows a horrible story about the employment generation in remaining two sectors. Okay, so now so we have talked about employment, and this means also the discussion about unemployment. So unemployment is lack of opportunities for earning money, or lack of opportunity for utilizing your earning potential. So there is a big problem of hidden unemployment in our country, especially in the primary sector. So what happens, suppose there is a farmer, he has a small plot of land, and that land is sufficient to feed the family of one farmer. Okay, and that plot of land is small enough that it can be efficiently managed by one farmer. Now suppose if the farmer is having 3 brothers, and all the 4 brothers they are working on the same farm. So in spite of 4 guys working on the farm productivity cannot be increased up to 4 times, because a plot of land has its own limitations. Okay, now even after 4 guys working on the farm, the productivity of farm is not sufficient to feed the family of 4 people. So now these 4 guys, they could have worked somewhere else, but they are still working on the same farm because they do not have opportunity for other kind of employments. So this is called hidden unemployment, where people, they appear to be working, they appear to be employed, but in fact they are not working, they are not producing, giving meaningful production, because they do not have alternate opportunities, and that is a big problem. The government of India, it has taken many initiatives to reduce the problem of unemployment, and under these endeavors MGNREGA Act 2005 was implemented. So MGNREGA stands for Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Under this act, the government guarantees at least 100 days employment for one person from each family in rural areas. So this program has ensured that the problem of hidden unemployment can be tackled to a certain extent, and this has given many people some avenues to earn their bread and butter. Okay, now let us talk about other classifications of the sectors of economy. So in other classification there are 2 types. One classification says that there are unorganized sector and organized sector. The establishment or company or a shop which does not obey the rules laid down by the government is called part of unorganized sector. In case of organized sector, all the rules, they are being followed. There are other differences as well. If a person is working in organized sector, he gets various benefits, like he gets his salary on time, he gets worker safety, workplace safety, he gets leave as and when required, then he gets social security as well. The social security is that suppose if because of some reason the person stops working, person loses the potential to work. Maybe he meets an accident and he becomes disabled, or he is seriously ill, so he cannot earn. In that case, what will happen to his family? And in the worst circumstance, if the person dies before a certain age and his children are still too young to earn on their own, so in that case, the government has made provisions to provide some sort of financial assistance in the form of provident fund, pension and other benefits, so that the family, it can survive. Okay, so this is the concept of social security, because a family should not be disturbed, because once a family is disturbed, it disturbs the whole society. So the benefits of social security are not in the unorganized sectors. The workers in unorganized sectors, they do not get payments on time. They have to work under poor working condition. They do not get leave. They may have to work pretty longer hours every day. So these are the problems. So for example, if a person is working in an established company, a private limited, then the person is working in unorganized sector. On the other hand, if another person is working for a small shop, then he is working for unorganized sector. Now, another classification is public sector and private sector. This is on the basis of ownership. So the sectors or the companies which are owned by the government, they form the public sector. For example, SAIL, the Steel Authority of India Limited. Companies which are owned by the private parties, they are called private sector. So Reliance Industries Limited, it is an example of private sector organization. So when the country became independent, the businessmen of this country, they did not have big capital, and so the basic industries and certain big industries, they need huge investments. So it was the time when there was a need that the government should step in and it should invest money to develop the basic industries and develop infrastructure where you need huge capitals. And that is how the public sector, it developed in India. It was because of need. And even today, certain sectors like railways or even roadways, they need huge capital inflows, and the gestation period is pretty long. It takes a very long to earn profitability, and that is why the government has to work in these sectors, and these are part of the public sector. To sum up, I talked about the various sectors of the economy. Then I talked about historical changes in sectors throughout the world. Then I talked about what is the current scene in India in all the sector in terms of contribution in GDP, valuation and employment generation. Then I talked about the problem of hidden unemployment, and finally I talked about the other classifications of sectors like organized sector or unorganized sector, then public sector and private sector. So that's all for this lesson. Thank you.